this debate about? And when you think about problem instead of what is the topic of this debate, you're already more focused into what you're actually going to try to prove, that is that you're going to fix something. So a topic can be children, economics, international relationship, or interactions between country A or B, or the impact on a national level. It's a little bit vague. Doing it in a problem sense means you're a little bit more focused. So the things you want to ask yourself when thinking about a problem is, who are we talking about? Who is affected by this problem? Where is this happening? What is exactly happening to them? So we had a beautiful example in my debate yesterday about the celebrities where teams did not ask themselves that question. Were you talking about Lindsay Lohan stealing? Were you talking about the drug use of Snoop Dogg? What type of crimes were you talking about? And immediately, when you have those types of concrete examples of who we're talking about, what are we talking about, you see the debate clearer. And they had the idea of role models, but they were never able to persuasively make the argument because they could never link it to things that were actually happening. So opposition got away with saying, I'm not going to murder someone because a celebrity did it. I have my own morals and values. Which makes sense if we're talking about murder. But you want to talk about different types of crimes of proposition, so therefore. The second thing you do is you start to look at your actual plan. Because you're not defending the motion, you're defending your plan. So the second thing I do is I start to think about, so what do we really want to do here? So who is children? Who are celebrities? Those kinds of questions are what you do there. Generally speaking, I use a similar trick to the problem as I use in my plan, and then I use the five W's that journalists tend to use for every article as well. So that's who, what, where, when, and why. Also keep in mind that this is one generic question, but essentially this is a mechanism. How does it work? So for anything that you are going to create or see as an outcome, you need to do this. If you have 3 problems you're going to fix, you need to have 3 times this. So the first burden of proof is always, does your plan solve the problem? As first prop, why I can come up with a very generic focused speech, even if I only have a problem in 14 minutes, I already know my first argument. It's why it fixes it. Justification is purely about justifying what you're doing. So why is it fair, justified, moral, those kinds of things, which is not dependent on the outcome. Because you can have something which is just and fair, independent of whether it is a positive outcome or a negative outcome. So when you talk about obese children and punishing the parents, the action is punishing the parents. So why is it fair, just, moral to punish the parents of these children? And I hope you see that when you ask this question, there's immediately an argument, because you have, straight away you have an idea of what you could talk about, which is relevant to the debate. The clash that comes out of that is, should the government do this or should the family do this? Who is the legitimate actor to make this choice?
Force the families to do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Rather.
And that's exactly the clash that comes out of this one. If I have no arguments, no time to think of arguments, but I just have a problem and a plan, I can do a first prop speech now. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a big problem in our society. I explain it. So this is what we're going to do. And I will justify that and explain that by 3 points. First of all, why I think this plan is effective. Second of all, why we as a government are responsible. And thirdly, why this is the right action to take. Let's get down to the first one. I have no idea what I'm going to talk about yet. But it already sounds like I know what I'm talking about. The third thing you do is a balancing act. Because usually what you end up in most debates is that there is problems that you're going to fix, you need to show that they're fixing it, but in the end there's often this idea of pros and cons, how do we weigh those against each other? Yeah. That's what happens last. But the reason I put it here is not because this is something only the summary speaker does, it is something that every speaker should keep in mind when bringing an argument. When you are showing a benefit to your plan, you should do that keeping in mind that it will later on be put on the scale that weighs, is it an improvement or a deterioration? So the first dimension is how many are impacted by it. So when you make an argument about either a positive effect or a negative effect, depending on which team you are, keep in mind that one of the things you want to make clear is that this should be in the largest possible group of people. Also keep in mind that numbers don't have to be precise.
Yeah.
It is about the sense of amount. So you've got all these words that you can use to describe that. 2/3, 80%, a stadium full of people. They're all numbers. Significant amount. They're all numbers in a sense, but they're not very specific. But what you're trying to do is give the judges an idea of a large group. You're helping one, or it's detrimental to 10. To what extent? And debaters tend to be very logically thinking people, and they often forget that most debates are about people. So the thing that you want to do here is you want to explain what is happening to these people as a result of this plan. And I say as a result explicitly because the consequences that you want to show are not just things that are happening, no, they are things that happen because of this plan. So when you talk about obesity, explain to me how bad it is to be obese. And don't just stop at the statistics, translate those statistics into human suffering. So when you talk about obesity, when you talk about the health impact, give me first of all the numbers of that. What does it mean? What can you get? How often do you die? How likely is it for you to die? But also what that means. Losing children as an adult. Or not being able, when obesity translates into adulthood, it means that you will not be able to see your daughter get married or to see them raised up. That kind of translation. Because what you're doing with those is you're increasing the impact, therefore the impact it has on the weighing. Because it becomes something which has a huge impact on people's lives. So that increases the size of this block. And I hope that you see if you make these two bigger, it's going to have a bigger impact on the decision the judge makes. This is not often an argument which has a huge impact on the debate, but when it is relevant, it is almost always forgotten. So 2 examples. Animals or people? Which is more important? Most people would say people. Yeah. So if you have a bad thing to animals, a good thing to humans, even if the blocks are the same size, the impact they have on the decision are different. Easier, clearer one, more persuasively, given that debaters have a lot of vegetarians in them. Children and adults. It's good for the adults, it's bad for the children. Who will likely win?
Kids.
The kids, yeah. Because we find kids way more important. It's a very consistent preference. Yeah. All questionnaires, people would always choose the same two. Yeah. So in that case, you have the relative importance of it.
I also feel it's a lot about how you speak. I mean, if you've ever been like, you've heard, I think Tinian for me is a good example, where it's the point you may not agree with when you really think about it, but the way the person presents it,
Yes.
it just makes you think like, yes, this is the one, like think about it. If you were ill and you could, you know, you had
Yeah.
your daughter.
And that's exactly what then happens is impact. You're translating what it means to have this or to not have that. That impacts hugely the decision that's being made. From an opposition perspective, what I often do in a very strategic kind of sense, I admit that it's going to work for some people because they fit the type of criteria that proposition used. But for a different group of people, it would not work. For instance, in the obesity, I would say there might be some parents who need a kick in their ass to do something about the weight of their children. But most parents love their children, have the right intentions, they're just helpless in doing anything about the obesity of their children. So for them, this plan is not going to change anything because they will have to be forced to pay the fine, but still don't know what to do. And what I'm doing then is I'm reducing the number that they're helping with their plan. When you're saying you're not helping that many people, that only becomes a strong argument if you put it against some harm. Because quite often you can say as a proposition, well, you shouldn't be allowed to say this, but quite often people get away with it, saying, well, at least we're helping some people. And they're right. Yeah, they're right. Yeah, we only saved one child. It's one child. Do you want one child to die? No. So the opposition argument is not that it's only one child, we don't care about that one child. The argument is you're helping one at the cost of 10. And that's the thing with the balance. So when you make a conclusion to an argument in which you talk about consequences, you do two things in that. First of all, you refer to how little they are actually helping, and you put it into contrast to the cost of it. That's where the argument